My daughter-in-law changed the locks on my bedroom door on a Tuesday morning while I was out buying groceries. Not the front door, my bedroom door. In my own house. I remember standing in the hallway with 2 bags of groceries in my hands, staring at a brand new deadbolt that had no business being there. A shiny brass lock on the door to the room where I'd slept for 31 years. The room where my wife Donna passed away 18 months before that day. I set the grocery bags down on the floor, slowly, and I just stood there for a moment, looking at it. That was the moment I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't say a word, I didn't make a phone call. I just picked my groceries back up, walked to the kitchen, put the eggs in the refrigerator, and started making a plan. My name is Gerald. I'm 67 years old. I spent 34 years working as a structural engineer for a firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. I retired at 63, healthy, financially comfortable, and looking forward to the years ahead with Donna. We had plans. A trip to Portugal we'd been talking about for years. A vegetable garden she wanted to expand. A granddaughter we were both crazy about. Donna died of pancreatic cancer 14 months after I retired. From diagnosis to the end was 11 weeks. 11 weeks. It didn't feel real. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget for about 3 seconds, and then I'd remember, and it felt like getting hit by a truck every single morning for about a year. My son Theodore, Theo we always called him, called me about 4 months after Donna's funeral. He was living in Raleigh with his wife Nadia and their 6-year-old daughter Lily. He said things weren't going great financially. His contracting business had hit a rough patch. Nadia's hours at the dental office where she worked had been cut. They were looking at losing their apartment lease in 2 months and weren't sure what their next move was. He didn't ask directly. Theo was never the kind of person to come out and ask for something directly. He laid out the situation, all the facts, and then there was a pause on the phone that I understood perfectly well. I said, "You can come stay here while you get back on your feet." "You sure, Dad? We don't want to impose." "You're not imposing. This house has 4 bedrooms and 1 person in it. Come stay here. I want to be honest about something." At the time, I meant it. I was genuinely glad to have them. The house felt enormous after Donna passed. Too quiet in a way that almost had weight to it. Having Lily running around, hearing voices at dinner, smelling someone else's cooking, it was good. It genuinely was good for a while. They moved in at the beginning of March. Theo and I agreed on a rough arrangement. He'd use the garage as a workshop space for some of his contracting work. They'd contribute to groceries and utilities when they could. No timeline was set. "Until we're back on our feet," as he said. I didn't push for specifics. I should have, but I didn't. The first few months were fine. Nadia was quiet and a little formal with me, but polite. She kept her space clean and helped around the house without being asked. Theo and I would have coffee in the mornings and talk like we hadn't in years. Lily called me Grandpa Jerry, and she followed me around the garden asking questions about everything. Those were genuinely good months. Things started shifting around late summer. I can't point to a single day it changed. It was gradual, the way these things usually are. The way a foundation settles, and you don't notice the cracks forming until one day the door won't quite close right anymore. Nadia started making comments about the house that felt less like conversation and more like assessment. "This kitchen layout is really inefficient, Gerald. The master bedroom gets so much more morning light. It's wasted on a guest room." That second one stayed with me. The master bedroom was where Donna and I had slept, where she'd died. I'd closed that door the week after the funeral and hadn't opened it since. Nadia said it like it was wasted space, like it was just a room. Theo stopped having coffee with me in the mornings. He was always busy projects, phone calls, things to take care of. Fair enough. But something in the texture of the house had shifted. I started feeling like a guest in my own kitchen. By fall, the financial contributions had quietly stopped. Nobody mentioned it. I didn't say anything either, which was my mistake. I kept telling myself they were still getting back on their feet, that bringing it up would feel petty. So I paid the utilities. I paid for the groceries more often than not. I replaced the water heater when it went. I told myself it was fine. Around November, Theo's contracting business picked back up significantly. He had 3 jobs running simultaneously. He bought a new truck, a nice one, an F-250 paid for in cash, he mentioned. Nadia went back to full-time hours and picked up a second part-time position on top of that. They were both working, both making decent money. And still nobody mentioned contributing to the house. I brought it up once, carefully, around Thanksgiving. I said I thought maybe now that things were more stable, it might make sense to talk about how we were handling household expenses. Theo looked at the table and said, "Yeah, we'll figure something out, Dad." Nadia said nothing. Nothing was ever figured out. I let it go. I shouldn't have, but I let it go. Christmas was uncomfortable. Nadia's parents came to stay for 4 days. Her mother, a woman named Vivian, spent most of those 4 days rearranging things in my kitchen and telling me which cabinet the mugs should be in. On the second day, Vivian said to me, bright and casual as anything, "I'm so glad Theodore and Nadia have found such a stable situation. It's so much better for little Lily to have a real home." A real home. I smiled and said I was glad too. I went to my bedroom afterward and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. In January, I overheard a phone call. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was in the hallway outside the kitchen, and Nadia was on the phone with someone, her mother, I think. And she was speaking in a low voice with the confidence of someone who doesn't think anyone is listening. "He's not going to do anything," she said. "He's lonely. He needs us here more than we need to be here. Trust me, he won't rock the boat." I went back to my office. I sat at my desk. I looked out the window at the garden Donna and I had built together over 20-some years. The rose bushes she planted the year Theo was born. I picked up a notepad and a pen, and I started making a list. The lock on my bedroom door appeared in late February, about 11 months after they'd moved in. I came home from the grocery store to find it there, shiny and new and final looking. When Theo got home that evening, I asked him about it quietly and directly. He looked uncomfortable. "It was Nadia's idea," he said. "She thought it would give you more privacy. I have a bedroom, Theo. I don't need a lock on it for privacy." "That's not what a lock is. Dad, it's not a big deal." "Whose idea was it to put a lock on a door in my house without asking me?" He met my eyes for a moment and then looked away. "I'll talk to her." He didn't talk to her. Or if he did, nothing changed. The lock stayed. And 2 days later, I came out of the bathroom in the morning to find Nadia standing in the hallway outside the closed door to Donna's room. She had her arms crossed, and she was looking at the door with an expression I can only describe as calculation. She heard me come out of the bathroom and turned around. "Good morning, Gerald. I've been thinking, we're a little cramped with the way things are set up. If Lily had her own room instead of sharing with us, it would really help everyone. That room at the end of the hall seems like it's just sitting empty." I looked at her for a moment. "That's my wife's room," I said. "I know, but Donna's been gone for almost 2 years. At some point, that's my wife's room," I said again. And I walked past her to the kitchen. "I want you to understand something. I am not a man who acts out of anger. I have never in my life made a major decision while I was upset, and I wasn't about to start. Every decision I made in the months that followed, I made calmly, deliberately, and with complete clarity of purpose. That morning, while Theo and Nadia were both out, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop, and I started making calls. The first call was to my attorney, a man named Dale Fitch I'd worked with for years. I explained the situation simply and asked what my options were. He walked me through the process of formal eviction in North Carolina. Because Theo and Nadia were not paying rent and had no lease agreement, they were considered tenants at will under state law, which meant I could issue a written notice to quit, 10 days in this case, and begin proceedings from there if they didn't comply. Dale said he could have the paperwork ready by the end of the week. I said I'd be in touch. The second call was to my financial advisor, a woman named Carol Brennan, who had managed my account since before I retired. I had lent Theo money on 3 separate occasions over the past 11 months. Once $8,000 for a materials cost overrun on one of his jobs, once $4,500 for what he described as an equipment repair emergency, and once $3,200 that he said was for Lily's private school tuition gap. Total, $15,700. None of it had been repaid. None of it had been accompanied by any kind of written agreement because he was my son and I hadn't thought I needed one. Carol listened and then said carefully, "Gerald, you know that without documentation, recovering that money may be complicated." "I know," I said. "I'm not doing this to recover the money. I'm doing this to have a clear picture of what I'm dealing with." "What are you planning?" "I'm planning to take care of myself," I said. The third call I made that morning was to my real estate agent, a woman named Susan Potts who had sold us the house in 1991 and had stayed in the business ever since. I asked her what I could reasonably expect to get for the house if I listed it in the current market. She gave me a number that was considerably higher than I'd expected. Charlotte's East Side had appreciated significantly. I said I'd be in touch about that too. I did not say a word to Theo or Nadia that evening, or the next day, or the next. On a Thursday morning, 10 days after the lock appeared on my bedroom door, I handed Theo an envelope at the breakfast table. He was eating cereal. Lily was at school, Nadia was in the shower. He looked at the envelope, he looked at me. "What's this?" "Open it." He opened it, he read it. I watched his face go from confused to alarmed to something that looked like disbelief. "Dad, this is an eviction notice." "It's a notice to vacate, yes, 60 days. Dale Fitch prepared it. His number is on the cover page if you have questions about the legal language." "Your dad, you can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not something I can answer for you, Theo. You're a grown man with a business and 2 incomes in this household. You've had 11 months to build up savings. That's what I would have used the time for. He stared at me. I refilled my coffee cup. Dad, we're your family. You are my family, I said. That's not what this is about. Then what is this about? I thought about something, about the lock, about Donna's room, about the overheard phone call, about Vivian and the mugs, about 3 years' worth of a mortgage I'd been paying while 2 employed adults used my home as a free hotel and decided which room of mine to take next. Instead, I said, it's about the fact that this is my house, and I'm choosing to change the arrangement. That's all. I finished my coffee, rinsed the cup, and went to my office to make some calls. Nadia's reaction came about 20 minutes. I heard her voice raised, sharp, in the kitchen. Then Theo's, lower, then her footsteps in the hall, then a knock on my office door. Come in, I said. She came in and stood in front of my desk. She was still in her bathrobe. Her hair was wet. Gerald, she said. I need to understand what is happening. You received the paperwork. It explains the situation. You're giving us 60 days to leave, that's correct. Because of what? Because I mentioned Lily's room situation? Because of the lock? The lock was installed without my knowledge or permission on a door in my house, I said. But no, this isn't a punishment for any specific thing. I've made a decision about how I want to use my property going forward. And what does that mean? It means I'm selling the house. She stared at me. I could see her recalibrating behind her eyes. You're selling it, she said. And where will you go? I have options, I said. Gerald, this is... She stopped. Started again. We have Lily to think about. She's in 1st grade. She's settled here. She has friends. Pulling her out of her school in the middle of the year, Nadia, I said, and I kept my voice very even. I love Lily. She is my granddaughter and I will always love her. But I need you to understand that managing the disruption this causes is your responsibility and Theo's. Not mine. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned around and walked out, closing the door very quietly behind her. That was more unsettling than if she'd slammed it, honestly. The next 60 days were not pleasant. I won't pretend they were. Theo swung between silences so complete it felt like living with a stranger, and conversations that alternated between guilt-based. Dad, I thought we meant more to you than this, and negotiation-based. What if we started paying rent, real rent, market rate? That last one actually came up twice. I declined both times. The ship had sailed on that arrangement as far as I was concerned. Nadia was coolly civil. She said good morning. She said excuse me when we passed in the hallway. She smiled at dinner when Lily was there. But her eyes, whenever they landed on me, had a quality I recognized. The look of someone doing a calculation they haven't finished yet. I kept my attorney in the loop on everything. Dale had advised me to document any incidents, keep a record of interactions, and under no circumstances enter into any new verbal agreements that could be construed as modifying the notice. I followed his advice to the letter. I also kept Susan informed on the real estate side. We decided to list the house at the start of the 2nd month of the notice period. The listing went up on a Wednesday. By that Friday we had 4 showings scheduled. By the following Wednesday we had 2 competitive offers. I accepted one and signed the purchase agreement on a Thursday afternoon, sitting in Susan's office. The closing was set for 8 weeks. Enough time for the legal situation to resolve, and for me to arrange my own next steps. I had found, about 3 weeks into all of this, an active adult community about 20 minutes east of Charlotte. 55 and older, well-kept, a small lake, a wood shop on the grounds that I was particularly interested in, and 24 residents who seemed to spend a lot of time outdoors. I put a deposit on a unit. The 60-day notice period ended on a Saturday. On Friday evening, Theo came to my office and said they would need more time. He said the housing market was tight. He said Nadia's mother might be able to take them temporarily, but it wasn't confirmed. He said Lily was upset. I said, the notice period is over tomorrow, Theo. I've been as flexible as the law allows me to be. I can't extend this further. Dad, I'm asking you as your son. I know you are. I'm sorry. The answer is no. He left the room without saying anything else. On Sunday, 2 days after the notice period expired, I came back from a morning walk to find 3 things I hadn't expected. First, Theo and Nadia's cars were both gone from the driveway, along with what appeared to be a significant portion of their belongings. Second, Lily was sitting on the front steps with her backpack and a stuffed rabbit she'd had since she was 3, and she looked at me with very big eyes and said, "Grandpa Jerry, Mommy said I have to wait here for a few minutes." I sat down next to her on the steps. I said, "Are you okay, Bug?" She nodded and leaned against my arm. We sat there for about 15 minutes before Nadia's car came back around the corner. Nadia got out and took Lily's hand without looking at me, and they drove away. Third, when I went inside, I found that the door to Donna's room, the room that had been closed since the week after her funeral, was open. They had been in it. I don't know exactly when or for how long. Some things had been moved. A lamp was missing. The quilt that Donna's mother had made, which had been folded on the chair in the corner, was gone. I stood in the doorway of that room for a long time. I can't fully describe what I felt. It was somewhere in the territory of grief and fury, but underneath both of those things was something more like a deep, clarifying sadness. The feeling you get when you realize something you were still hoping wasn't true is, in fact, exactly as true as you feared. I took photographs of everything. I called Dale. I filed a police report for the missing items. I then called Theo and told him calmly that if the lamp and the quilt were not returned within 48 hours, I would be pursuing the matter legally and providing his contact information to the responding officer. The quilt came back, dropped on the porch in a bag while I was out, no note. The lamp did not. I followed up on the report. I also, at Dale's advice, documented the condition of every room in the house for the purposes of the real estate sale. There were some repairs needed, scuffs on walls, a door hinge that had been forced and bent, and in the garage where Theo had been using the space as a workshop. A significant amount of debris and some oil stains on the concrete floor that were going to require professional cleaning. I got estimates. I deducted these from the $15,700 I'd quietly decided I was writing off as the cost of the education I'd received over the past 11 months. I closed on the house 6 weeks later. I sat at the title company's conference table and signed my name probably 30 times, and when the last page was done and the notary gathered everything up, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not loss, not regret, not even relief exactly, just a very quiet sense of clarity, like something that had been slightly out of focus for a long time had finally sharpened. I moved into my unit in the community 3 days before the sale closed, staying in a hotel in between. The unit was smaller than the house, considerably smaller, but I had chosen it carefully. It had good natural light in the mornings, a patio that faced west for the evenings, and a second bedroom I turned into an office. From my patio I could see a corner of the lake. The first morning I woke up there, I made coffee and sat on the patio and listened to the birds and the sound of the water, and I thought about Donna. I thought about Portugal. I thought about the vegetable garden we never got to expand. I took a sip of coffee and decided I was going to take the Portugal trip, alone if necessary, maybe in the spring. I want to be clear about something because people sometimes want these stories to end with anger or with triumph, and mine doesn't end either of those ways. I was not triumphant when Theo and Nadia drove away. I was not angry, not really, not by then. What I was more than anything was clear. I had allowed the situation to develop the way it did, and that was on me as much as anyone. I had not set terms. I had not spoken up when I should have. I had told myself that being accommodating was the same as being kind, and I had learned, at 67 years old, that those are not the same thing at all. Kindness without boundaries is not kindness. It's just an open door, and an open door will eventually let in whatever decides to walk through it. Theo called me about 3 months after they moved out. He called on a Sunday morning. I was in the woodshop on the grounds, working on a bookshelf, the first piece of furniture I'd built in probably 20 years. I stepped outside to take the call. He asked how I was. I said I was well. He said they had found a house to rent in a suburb north of Raleigh, a decent neighborhood, good school district. He said Lily was adjusting fine and had made friends in the new school. I was glad to hear that. I genuinely was. There was a pause. Then he said, "Dad, I owe you an apology." I waited. "I let things go in a direction I shouldn't have," he said. "I should have been contributing from the start. I should have. I let Nadia's attitude go unchecked, and that wasn't fair to you. And the stuff with Mom's room." He stopped. "That was wrong. I should have said something." I said, "I appreciate you saying that, Theo. I'm not asking for anything. I wanted to say it." "I know," I said. "I believe you." We talked for another 20 minutes or so. About Lily, about his business, about nothing in particular. At the end of the call, I told him I was planning a trip to Portugal in the spring, and asked if he had any interest in joining me for part of it. There was a long pause. "Yeah," he said, and I could hear something shift in his voice. "Yeah, Dad, I'd really like that." I went back inside and finished the bookshelf. It turned out well. Solid joints, clean finish, exactly the right proportions. I set it in the corner of my office and stood back and looked at it. Sometimes the best thing you can build is the thing you should have built a long time ago.